Hey guys, Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. I am the owner and publisher of the Maxfield Report, and here is your market recap for week ending October the 4th. Last week was a very interesting week. We had the Chinese tanners observing their National Day holiday, and we're out all last week. Korea had a couple holidays sprinkled in, and we also saw the fall edition of the Linnipel Fair that took place in Milan on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So overall, as far as what happened last week, interesting enough, Packers came out with one of the largest offer lists we've seen in some time. In fact, probably over the course most of the summer. And I'll explain that here in just a couple of minutes as to why it was so interesting. So pretty sizable offers by Packers. As far as asking prices, unchanged with their past few weeks. I'll get into that just a little bit further here in a minute or two. And as far as shipping times, they are still pretty far out. And what I think is going on is that Packers are trying to liquidate every sale they have to China because it is imperative that they get there before the December 15th deadline, because that's when tariffs are going to increase on hides being exported from the United States. As far as interest, as expected with, the Chinese on vacation, people traveling over to Milan, Korea in and out during the course of the week. I don't know of anybody who was really saying it was a busy week of interest. I think there were people trying to pick around the edges, taking advantage of the Chinese being out. Long story short, I would call it a decent week of interest. Not that it was probably enough to clear the production, but I didn't hear anybody complaining that they really had zero business. So the bids were coming in $2-3 under. Packers, of course, were refusing to take those prices, adhering to their steady asking prices. The hides that did exchange hands last week did so at steady levels. Some people would say there might have been as many hides that didn't get booked as that got booked last week. So as far as, how it turned out for sellers, steady prices, questioned if they sold enough. That's the only downside of it. As far as cows, really no change. Still offer list very populated. Cows remain very difficult to sell, especially lower grades such as branded cows, even native cows to a lesser degree. Dairy cows able to hold their own for the most part, but we just, not a lot of people wanting these cows. It seems as if the leather orders out there are calling for some of the better quality hides. So I don't think sellers had the best week of trading. They left their asking prices steady, preferring to negotiate, once bids came in. End of the day, the trading we're hearing was reported at steady levels, but there's a lot of rumblings going on that there's maybe some sales at slightly lower levels in order to get business done. Looking at the harvest last week, the harvest came in at 639, a little bit below expectations. It was 648 the week prior, 640 the same week last year. For the year, we're up about slightly more than 250,000 head versus last year. It's about 1%. If you remember, I've been telling you that this knock's going to come in for the year, basis guesstimates, and my personal estimate, somewhere around 1.5% higher than last year. The one thing to keep in mind on with this harvest, our weather starting to turn cold and unseasonably cold very quickly. Cattle coming out of the feedlots are heavier than a year ago. So when cattle come in heavier, we all think in terms of one head, one hide, but they're killing these things for the beef. If there's more beef on the animal, they don't have to kill as many animals in order to get the tonnage that they need for the boxes. So a lot of us are thinking we're going to see these larger numbers. That might be counterproductive, that we're going to start seeing, heavier cattle, maybe not as many harvested, but the offside of that is there's a lot of numbers available, and when cattle get fed too much, they become overweight. Well, then the Packers want to discount those cattle and not pay as much because there's 5 different yield grades, 1 through 5. 1 through 3 are ideal. That's what the Packers want to process in their plants. 4s and 5s, they'll sell those outside the plant because they don't want to deal with it because there's too much fat content and they can't get the yield they want out of them. So a little bit of a balancing act coming up here, and that could make this harvest pretty interesting. The other number we'll come back to is, as far as offerings and tie this in, the export report came out on Thursday, bigger than anybody ever estimated. Let me recap it for you. Wet salted sales at 594,000. Wet salted shipments were 392. Net sales of wet blue were 192,000, and exports of wet blue were 153,000. Combined, the sales number is the largest of the year. This follows 2 decent weeks where numbers were close to the harvest. So over the course of the last 3 weeks, we've sold almost 2 million hides, 1 million hides to China. If we have sold so many hides in the last 3 weeks, why is there so many offers? Could that be the 5 weeks prior to this 3-week period, we only sold about 2 million hides? I'm hearing a lot of reports of hides showing up and having a little bit of age to them at various tanners. So what I think is going on here is that because of this deadline to China with the tariffs, China has stepped in. They're buying as much as they can, have them show up before the 15th. As we go forward, I'm going to be keeping an eye on that number to China because I'm expecting that number will go down. That means there's going to be more hides for sale. And keep an eye on that because that could be the tipping point of where we might see this market go down a little bit. But something to keep an eye on there. Let's go around the world real quick. It's mentioned Milan Fair took place last week. The reports from the fair, it really depended on who you talk to. Some people are like, you know what, the attendance wasn't too bad. Other people, you know what, the attendance wasn't really that good. In fact, I'm sorry that I went. So I think it depends on maybe what time of the day you went, what day you went, where you were standing. But really nothing big coming out of there. The only real chatter we heard is that apparently Mercedes and BMW, Volkswagen are talking about some of their lower end models. They're going to make leather an option rather than mandatory in it because, apparently, these younger generation pushing for, don't want the greenhouse gases from, the animals farting and all that good stuff. So that was really the only chatter. We understand that the European car sales came out over the weekend. They were indicating lower sales again than a year ago. That's not surprising, being that their economy is still struggling. And of course, everybody's got an eye on Brexit, whether it'll be a hard Brexit or an easy Brexit. A hard Brexit would be, I think, detrimental to the market. But overall, as far as interest on the hides, I think offers were unchanged. That market seems to be at least found some steady ground. Any chance to try to get higher money is being met with a lot of resistance, but yet, trying to buy hides lower is not flying there either. Brazil, they've just continued to have problems down there. You have a lot of the major brands refusing to take product now out of Brazil because of the Amazon fires. Will that be good news for those selling cows outside of Brazil? I think so, but there's still a lot of hides for sale in Brazil, a lot of wet blue, a lot of crust. Fresh hides are going to the dump. It's really kind of a bit of a train wreck down there. So not real positive news coming out of Brazil. Our friends in Australia, they report really no change. Their big deal is they've got drought conditions in the northern part of the country. Their harvest numbers are well above a year ago. Cattle numbers, coming to market are obviously very large. The longer term outlook is that we're borrowing ahead on cattle, and come next year, you're going to see smaller numbers. Some people are saying, maybe 8-10%. I've heard people say maybe as much as 10 to 15% lower. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. But right now, with the larger numbers on the lower grades, they're struggling to hold the market steady. On better quality stuff, fully steady prices, but any attempt to get more money is, like it is everywhere else, being met with a lot of resistance. As far as my thoughts for next week, we're going to change this up. Come on in for a free trial. www.themaxfieldreport.com. You come in for that trial. It's a free 14-day trial. You'll find out what I'm thinking is going to happen. Maybe give you a little insight as to what to expect. So that's it for this week. It's Ken Maxfield, the Hide Guy. Until next week. Thanks.